Why are films and movies and other web series and other kinds of videography projects like that so difficult to crowdfund? Well, it's because those kinds of projects have very unique features that kind of make them very unsuitable for crowdfund. Ordinarily, with a project, I like to be able to prototype it before the crowdfunding campaign goes and really be in deep with the manufacturer for whatever product it is that is going to be created here. But you're not going to have anything like that with a film because films are hard to prototype. And then they have no fixed production cost. Now, my strong preference, is to have any kind of campaign before the crowdfunding campaign actually runs to be 90 or 95% finished before the campaign even launches. So that's what that manufacturer sample is. If you're doing a physical product, all of your product development has already been done. You hashed it out with the manufacturer, and now they've handed you the sample and said, hey, is this what you want? And you look at it and go, yep, that is what I want. Let me get you the money in order to put this into production. That's not the way it is with a film. Ideally, I would like to do the same thing with a film. I'd like to have 95% of the film done and then be able to crowdfund like some kind of remaining part of the film, like possibly parts of post-production or things like that, in order to push the film over the finish line. Some people don't have the money to go into pre-production or production for the film before the crowdfunding campaign. And so it's very hard to prototype a film and tell people what it's going to be. Hey, I'm going to do this neat film. Yes, you can sometimes have some concept art and things like that, but people know that by the time, if all you have is some concept art, maybe you have the script written, and you got to go through all of your pre-production and then your principal photography and then through all of your post-production, that is a Herculean effort that is still ahead of that person. And, a lot of films get started and then they don't get made. And so that has happened on crowdfunding a lot as well. So if you're trying to articulate to somebody what your vision for your film is, to even try to start a fan base, the fact that it could be very difficult for you to have anything to show them to get them excited about it is difficult. If you had already been able to go through all of your principal photography and then had been able to edit together several scenes, especially maybe a couple of different trailers and things like that to use for your crowdfunding effort, you are much further in, because then you have trailers and you have, maybe a couple of scenes or something like that to use to market your crowdfunding campaign to get people in. If you don't have that, it's much harder. In the very, very, very early days of crowdfunding, you could have, an idea on a napkin or something and say, hey, look, I've got this really neat idea. Can you come and support me? But then people realized, hey, that people with ideas on napkins may not have any idea how to actually complete the project. And another problem with the films is that they have no necessarily fixed production costs. When I'm going in and I'm doing a physical product, in order to set all of my reward levels, I like to have that manufacturer's quote in my hand saying, this is how much it's going to cost if I order this. Okay, that's good. I'll go get you the money and I'll pay this, and then you will give me that number of items. Of course, if you have, a very cutthroat producer and director, then, you got to make it on this budget. But then, of course, we all have situations with film and videography projects where, you can spend as much as you want on them, and sometimes that you do end up, for all kinds of reasons, running over budget. And if you run over budget and you've already done your crowdfunding campaign, well, then where are you? You're not going to be able to finish the project, and you're going to have a bunch of angry backers. Here's the big one. A custom backers, let's say people are accustomed to low-cost or free movies. And this one is definitely difficult and in some ways insurmountable. What kind of money are people willing to pay for a really neat tech gadget? Well, a lot. Hundreds. 80, 90, that's not, out of the picture depending on what it is, but 100, 150, 200, something like that, more, depending on what it is. People are willing to shell out for those. And board games, which I've done a lot with, our big box board games you can see I've got behind me, a lot of those are expensive. And people know that, and people are used to spending $60, $70, $80, $90 or more for some of the big box board games that are out there. But people are not accustomed to spending that much for a movie. And that's a problem. And it's just the way that our distribution system and being part of films has. Like, if you subscribe to Netflix, Well, I mean, what do you pay? I'm not subscribed to Netflix right now. I don't know what it's up to. But, $7 a month, $9 a month, $12 a month, whatever it is that you're paying, you get that, and then you just get to watch whatever you want. And, on any particular movie, TV show, whatever, it's an extremely small price. Sometimes people do rent things or buy things directly from Apple or Amazon. I mean, I've done that. But what are people paying in order to rent a movie? They're paying like $2.99. They're not paying $80 for this movie. So people are accustomed, even if they are purchasing something digitally like that, to not pay very much for a movie. And that's an extra problem because production costs are expensive. So if you need to raise $100,000, $150,000, $250,000, whatever it is like that, and people are only willing to pay $1.99 for your web series or your film or whatever it is, you're going to have a lot of people in there paying $1.99 for that. And that means the amount of outreach that you're going to have to be doing as far as all of your marketing efforts is going to be huge. And in many ways, it isn't worth it. Because if you're thinking about, well, I've got this new film I'm doing, and nobody's ever heard of it before, but I'm going to try to crowdfund it, and I want them to all bring... Let's say they understand and they're going to bring $4.99. So, if you got to raise, let's say you're going to try to raise $150,000 to do something at $4.99 per backer, and let's say that you don't have to deal with shipping costs because you can do this all digitally. So that is an advantage right there because you could be able to digitally deliver this to them. But you got $150,000 and you're going to divide that by $4.99. Whoa, that's 30,000 backers that you've got to have, which is an astronomical number. 30,000 backers. So you can see that isn't going to work. That you're not going to be able to find 30,000 backers who will all give you $4.99 in order to raise this $150,000. What is your marketing cost in order to attract those 30,000 people? If it's more than, if it's obviously more than $4.99, you're going backwards. But, even if you're spending $1, $2, $3 in your initial advertising and marketing, that's eating into your $150,000 right there, and you might as well just go ahead and spend the $150,000 to make the film rather than trying to do the crowdfunding campaign and then try to market and distribute it in some different way after that. So, what's one way that people try to make up for this? Well, they say, well, you're right. People are not used to paying very much for movies. Maybe $4.99 is the max. Maybe if you have a diehard fan base who actually understands the difficulty of production and things like that, and they really do want to support your film, we could possibly go up to $20 or something like that. But I would say that's in extreme cases for just the film. So what do people try to do? Well, they try to say, well, you know what? Let's do stuff. Let's create some swag, some other merchandise that's related to the film project, that backers can come in and get. So people will try to make stuff. And the problem here is that it's not easy to make stuff. No matter what you are trying to do, even some of the relatively simple products that you're trying to do, like people think of, people try to do t-shirts for their films all the time, or cups or mugs or glasses and things like that. Those things are relatively easy because, a shirt is already sitting there and you're like, print this on it. Or, the mug is already there and print this on it. Even if you're trying to do stuff like that, man, there can be a lot of difficulties in all of that as well. I was doing some mugs for the cultists, and I got some of them made, and I thought, well, I wanted to start off with something easy. But, as it turns out, the shipping company was just not packing those mugs correctly, and they were just shattering by the time they got to the customer's doorstep. And they were not happy about it, and I was not happy about it. So I ended up having to bring all the mugs here to the house, and I've been shipping them out of the office. And fortunately, I didn't get all that many. But, even something as simple as a mug, okay, well, is your shipping company really going to be able to ship those so that they are safe and not breaking? And of course, it's more expensive to ship fragile things because you have to pack them right and things like that. Even t-shirts. I tried to do t-shirts as well. And you'd think also, well, you should be able to get t-shirts printed. People get t-shirts printed all the time. We'll talk about this, I guess, in a different video and in more detail. But I went and did a lot of shirts with some people, and they completely bungled the print job and completely printed everything off skew. There wasn't anything in that whole, order of shirts that was actually usable that I could send to a customer. So even things like that can be difficult. And then if you try to do something more difficult, like some kind of custom product that isn't something off the shelf like a cup or a mug or something like that, everybody's got cups and mugs already. So you try to do something that's a little bit different and something that's unique, for your film. Well, then you're increasing the amount of potential error, because that's when you better have it prototyped before you go to your crowdfunding campaign, because it's no good to find out the manufacturer can't actually make the object that you thought they could make, because they said they could, but then they actually got to the prototyping phase after the Kickstarter campaign. They're like, oh yeah, we can't actually make this. And you've already promised it to your backers, and that's no good. And then, moreover, making stuff is not making a film. Making stuff is not why a lot of filmmakers get involved in filmmaking. They want to get involved in filmmaking because they want to make films. And so all of a sudden, it's very complex because you're global from day one. To manufacture some type of brand new object and then get it manufactured and then get it freighted around the world to different warehouses and then manage shipping and then manage all of the customer service for lost or damaged packages, or if something was packed wrong or something like that. That's a whole lot of effort. And I do it because I already had experience in that area about how to coordinate, manufacturing and then all of the shipping and the warehousing and the freighting and stuff like that. I'd been through that multiple times. But the only reason I do it is because I have done it before and I know how it goes and I know what I'm getting into when I sign up to try to do something like that. But I don't recommend that to other film people. There are very few people, as in maybe none, but maybe one, who I know who are trying to do films and that I would actually recommend, oh, well, you should do a product line associated with that film, because they've never done it before. They're going to get in deep. It's probably not going to work. It's probably not going to go well. And then at some point they're going to realize, wait a minute, I'm spending all of my time trying to get these widgets from this warehouse, made right, and then get it from this warehouse and coordinate all of this and get it through customs and all of that. And I'm spending all my time on this. And you know what I'm not doing? I'm not making my film. And so, understandably and justifiably, a lot of people will just say, screw it, right? And they'll be very upset about that. So, making your stuff, merchandising, that's very different. It's a very different skill set than making the film. Those are two different things. So, to try to have those manifest in the same person for the same project, very difficult. So, my recommendation is not to really try it, because all of that extra complication there, that's going to be taking money away from the film as well. And I've gone over that in a kind of a budget for filmmaking, another one. If you start to, needing a certain amount of money for the film, but then you also have to buy a bunch of merchandise, that's just raising the amount of money that you're going to have to raise. And at some point, it may not even become worth it. Be like, well, the amount that I have to raise here, I should just acquire the money that's actually needed for the film in some other way. So that's my basic rundown on why these are difficult. And the people expecting low and free cost movies for a product, the film, which is very expensive, that's just a part of our society that's very difficult to overcome.